Welcome to World Affairs Today, brought to you by the World Affairs Council, Washington, D.C., a leading forum for global education and international affairs.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Cully Foster. I have the honor of being the President and CEO of the World Affairs Council, DC. We welcome all of you here tonight. I want to let you know that tonight is a historic night for our organization. It's historic because for the first time in our history, we're launching a television series that focuses on women, female ambassadors in the United States, serving foreign female ambassadors in the U.S. in a Women Ambassadors television series, 10 one-hour programs. As you know, those who are regulars, we have our own one-hour nationwide television program, 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoons. It broadcasts nationwide on MHC networks. It also is broadcast on YouTube TV and other digital platforms so that it can go global. We get a lot of feedback on both the domestic and international broadcasts of our programs. Now, a statistic. Out of 193 embassies and representative offices in Washington, D.C., there are 16 female ambassadors. In New York, where the diplomatic corps is larger, like everything is in New York, I'm told, there are 31 female ambassadors. Now, those are not very impressive statistics, unless you focus on quality as well as quantity. And we're going to talk about that tonight because our first foreign female ambassador, who will be addressing you tonight, is an exemplar. She's been in Washington, D.C. for 12 years. She's served with great distinction. She comes from a small but powerful nation, the Sultanate of Oman, which is located in Southwest Asia. It's situated on the southeast coast of the Arabian Peninsula, bordered by the United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and the Arabian Sea. It's twice the size of the state of Georgia and only slightly smaller than Kansas. Arabic is the official language of Oman. Other languages spoken are English, Urdu, and other Indian dialects that are spoken by Indian immigrants and tourists. Oman has a population of 3.2 million, but only 2.1 million are Omani. The rest are guest workers from primarily India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. As with other Gulf nations, oil is the mainstay of the economy, providing a large chunk of the Oman GDP. But compared to its neighbors, Oman is a modest producer. Agriculture and fishing are important sources of income. Omanis, like the Irish, are tribal people, and the family is the center of their life. Oman is the oldest human-inhabited places on Earth. Humans have lived in what is now known as Oman for at least 106,000 years. And the city of Derez is at least 9,000 years old. Violent crime is almost non-existent. The United States Bureau of Diplomatic Security calls Oman's violent crime rate extremely rare. In 2011, there were 1.1 homicides out of 100,000 people, something we can only wish for in most parts of the United States. A factoid for Generation X and those millennials out there. Pepsi products are much more common than Coca-Cola products in Oman. This is largely due to the unusual popularity of Mountain Dew, which is one of the top-selling beverages in the country. Maybe the ambassador will share the secret behind the drinking habits of the Omanis. The Omanis were once considered among the greatest shipbuilders in the world. They used kwar, rope made from coconut fibers, to lash shipboards together. They are immune not only from Al-Qaeda penetration, the Islamic State, ISIS, in Iraq and Syria, likewise failed to recruit any Omani citizens into its ranks. Oman is heavily dependent on its dwindling oil resources, which generate 84% of government revenue. Higher education is offered at the Sultan Qaboos University and several post-secondary specialized colleges and institutes. A BP report estimates that Oman's oil reserves will run out in 17 years' time if it does not step up production from its current levels. And the latter action step will be very costly to its economy. Promoting new industries and expanding downstream oil operations, such as petrochemicals, have been a cornerstone of the Gulf Arab states' claim to cut its 73 billion economy's reliance on crude oil exports. Among other projects, Oman hopes to boost growth and employment with a 625-mile, 3 billion railway network. Metro. It is also investing heavily in airport and port operations in the southern city of Salalah, near the border with Yemen. Oman has embarked on a sharply increased round of military expenditures over the last decade, that it has put it among the top 5 countries in the world in terms of military expenditures as a share of national income. U.S. relations, Oman has been a long ally to Washington, not least because of a steady relationship with Iran. It has enjoyed a strong relationship with the United States for more than 200 years. Factoid: Oman was the first Arab nation to recognize the United States as an independent nation. In September, the U.S. Embassy in Oman and the Royal Oman Police conducted a joint military training exercise together with the U.S. Navy in order to improve crisis response capabilities during natural disasters. In January of this year, Secretary Kerry and Omani Minister Abdullah signed a U.S.-Oman Science and Technology Cooperation Agreement that will promote scientific and technological cooperation in the areas of mutual benefit for peaceful purposes, and to provide opportunities to exchange ideas, information, skills, and technique. Oman plays an important role in helping the United States realize its regional stability goals. It is strategically located on a key naval choke point through which 40% of the world's exported oil shipments pass. The government of Oman relies heavily on foreign assistance and capacity building to keep this critical sea lane open to naval vessels and commercial traffic. U.S. assistance contributes to counter-piracy efforts, strengthens Oman's capability to monitor and control its borders, improves interoperability of the Oman military with U.S. forces. Under the MOU on environmental cooperation signed in 2006, alongside the Free Trade Agreement, the Department of State's trade-related environmental cooperation programs focus on protecting the environment while promoting sustainable development. The United States and Oman have a free trade agreement which has been in force since 2009. U.S. exports to Oman include machinery, vehicles, aircraft, agricultural products and medical instruments. U.S. products from Oman include crude oil, jewelry, plastics, fertilizers, iron and steel products. And now to our guest of honor tonight. Ambassador, Her Excellency, Hunaina Sultan Ahmed Al Mughairy presented her diplomatic credentials to President George W. Bush on December 2nd, 2005. She focused much of her initial energy on the U.S.-Oman Free Trade Agreement until Congress affirmatively voted on it in September 2006. As the first female Arab representative in Washington, D.C., she has worked hard to improve the image of Arab Muslim women and dispel American stereotypes during her stay in the United States. She earned the Ambassador of the Year Award, 2011, from the National U.S. Arab Chamber of Commerce, and has used her 16 years of living in the country not only to visit 35 of our nation's states, but to also forge a series of diplomatic and commercial agreements. Two recent events have served to boost Oman's commercial relationships with the United States. First, the U.S. Department of State's Middle East Partnership Initiative signed a memorandum of understanding to promote small and medium-sized enterprises in cooperation with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Secondly, the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the National U.S. Arab Chamber of Commerce signed an MOU to establish the Oman-U.S. Joint Business Council, the first bilateral entity of its kind between the two nations. The new council, now in formation, is expected to concentrate on the transfer of knowledge and technology, better business practices, regulatory system, capacity building, and trade and investment facilitation. Ambassador Al Mughairy has stated, quote, "The relationship between Oman and the U.S. stands as a model of how free people determined to maintain their territorial integrity and political independence can and do cooperate for their mutual interest." Our speaker tonight is a successful businesswoman and mother. She was appointed as an advisor to the Undersecretary for Industry at the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in 1991, held this position until 1996. Then she became the Director of Investment Promotion at the Omani Center for Investment Promotion and Export. Up until 2005, she served as the representative of the Omani Center for Investment Promotion and Export Development in New York City. She also has the distinction of being the first foreign ambassador in the United States to be appointed as a voluntary member of our World Affairs Council, D.C., non-executive Global Advisory Board. In the trade, we've got what we call a twofer. We've got 2 stars for the price of 1 tonight. The other one, I regret to say, for the folks who are here from American University and other universities other than George Washington, you're in second place. All right. Dr. Doug Shaw serves as the Senior Associate Provost for International Strategy at the George Washington University, the largest higher education institution in the United States capital, located in the heart of Washington, D.C., just 4 blocks from the White House. Dr. Shaw's work involves leveraging Washington for global impact by partnering with powerful global institutions in George Washington's neighborhood, including the U.S. Department of State, the International Monetary Fund, to extend GW's teaching, research, and service capacity. Dr. Shaw also serves proudly on the board of the World Affairs Council, Washington, D.C., where his president preceded him for 6 years, and now is a member of the same council as Ambassador Al-Mughairy, and that is our Global Advisory Council. Most importantly, for this first program in our 10-program series on Woman Ambassador in the United States, Dr. Shaw, in a voluntary capacity, serves as the chairman of our International Affairs Committee, which works to engage the Washington diplomatic community on contemporary issues of global significance. I want to thank Doug for also sharing time with us here tonight. He will be our discussant, and following Ambassador Al-Mughairy's remarks, he will have the privilege of asking the first couple of questions. Seniority has its privileges, doesn't it? And he will then turn it over, of course, to what we want to hear, and that is questions from you, our audience. Thank you very much indeed.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Oh, with enthusiasm. Come on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collie Foster, for the generous introduction. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor for me to be here this evening. It's also a great pleasure for me to have been appointed in the World Affairs Global Advisory Council. When I received the letter, I was very excited and said, of course I will accept this straight away. Thank you very much for having thought of me. My speech tonight will be about Oman's foreign policy, its relationship with its neighbors, and specifically its relationship with the United States. Of course, Oman is a country with a very small population. Mr. Collie Foster, our population has increased a little bit since the last statistics. We are now about 4 million. And we're approximately 309,500 square kilometers. And it occupies a strategic location at the southern eastern corner of the Arabian Peninsula, at the junction of the world's 3 large continents, Asia, Europe, and Africa. It has a coastal line extending almost 1,700 kilometers overlooking the Arabian Gulf, the Sea of Oman, and the Arabian Sea. We enjoy a stable social, political, and economic system, and we have excellent relationship with our neighboring countries, which has enabled us to play an active role in promoting regional, political, and economic cooperation. Oman's foreign policy is based on 4 principles. First, the development and maintenance of good relations with our neighboring country. In fact, we are one of the few countries in the region who have marked borders, so thank God we don't have any dispute when it comes to borders with our neighbors. Second, it's an outward-looking and international outlook in keeping Oman's geographic location and long-standing maritime traditions. As you mentioned, we are a maritime country, just like the United States was a few years ago. We are pleased to enjoy excellent cooperation relations with a wide range of states in the West and elsewhere. In Asia, where long-standing ties and associations take new forms in the age of oil and gas, where China, Japan, Thailand, Korea, Singapore, and India, just to name a few countries, are amongst our most important partners. Third, a pragmatic approach to bilateral relations, emphasizing geostrategic realities rather than temporary ideological position. Fourth, Oman's commitment to search for security and stability through cooperation, dialogue, and peace. These principles have been consistently applied and have proved both valuable and durable. Oman's adherence to these principles has allowed foreign policy to be flexible and meet the challenges of the new international environment with confidence. These principles are derived from Oman's value of tolerance, compassion, consultation, and moderation, and Oman actively seeks to promote, through discussion, dialogue, and cultural exchange, the fullest possible outstanding and mutual respect between the diverse cultural traditions of the world. In the application of these four principles, economic considerations play an increasingly important role, and in keeping with the basic statute of the state, Oman conducts its economic relations with other countries on the basis of free market principles. We encourage free trade, the participation of private sector in all aspects of social, economic activities, and supports international agreements on intellectual property and foreign investment. Oman adopts multilateral approach to the global economy in recognition of the way in which globalization links all economies with one another. We are founding members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the members of the Arab League and the United Nations, as well as the founding members of the Indian Ocean Rim Association of Regional Cooperation. In its participation in all these regional and global bodies, and in many others, Oman seeks to encourage cooperative solutions to global and regional problems and to uphold international law, internationally agreed principles, conventions, and legal framework. We have consistently and actively supported moves towards a comprehensive Arab-Israeli peace settlement in accordance with the principle of land for peace and in conformity with United Nations Security Council resolution. The right of self-determination and respect for national sovereignty remain key values shaping Oman's approach to international relations, and we continue to work in collaboration with our friends and allies to ensure that these values are upheld globally. The second part of my lecture will focus on Oman's US relations. Despite the thousands of miles which separates us physically, the United States and Oman are two countries which always had common interests. Both had seafaring traditions. Each was a maritime traditional trading society. The United States has maintained relationship with the Sultanate since the early years of the American independence. Said bin Sultan, the great-great-grandfather of His Majesty, the present Sultan, encouraged greater American commercial interests in his realm. For the better part of the quarter of the century, he maintained close personal and commercial relationship with the Americans. Oman was the first country to sign a bilateral treaty of amity and commerce in 1833. The treaty is in display at the U.S. National Archives Record Administration. It was replaced in 1958 by a treaty of amity, economic relation, and consular rights, which was signed in 1958. Available statistics for the early 1900s suggest that the total import and export trade between the two countries reached almost $250,000. For many years, about 2/3 of Omani's exports came to the United States. The United States established a consulate in Muscat in 1880, which lasted until 1915, at which time American interests in Oman were handled by U.S. diplomats in other countries. Diplomatic relation was established on 17th of April 1972, when American envoy and Minister Plenipotentiary William Stolfus Jr. presented his credentials to the government of Oman. He was accredited to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, and as well as Kuwait, and he was a resident in Kuwait. So you can see that we've come a long way when one representative from the United States who was stationed in Kuwait represented all the countries in the Gulf region, while today each one of us has its own diplomatic mission from the United States. The United States Embassy in Muscat was established on July 4th, 1972. The first resident ambassador in Oman presented his credentials to the Sultan on July 17th, 1974. We opened our embassy in Washington, D.C. in 1973. I'm the 9th ambassador from Oman to the United States. In 1985, His Majesty the Sultan paid an official visit to the U.S. and met with President Ronald Reagan, President George H.W. Bush, and President William J. Clinton visited the Sultanate in 1986 and 2000, respectively. Oman and the United States belong to a number of the same international organizations, including the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. Today, the United States and Oman share common interests and objectives in the Arabian Gulf area, including peace, regional stability, security, and economic development. The relationship between Oman and the United States stands as a model of how free people determined to maintain their territorial integrity and political independence, we can and do cooperate for their mutual interests. Because we have excellent relationship with our neighboring countries, we assisted in negotiating the release of the 3 hikers, American hikers in Iran. And last September, we assisted in evacuating the American embassy from Yemen. We also played a major role in the release of 4 Americans who also have been held as hostages in Yemen. If we did not have good relationship with both the United States and these other countries, we would not have been able to do so. This is why we're strong believers of having excellent relationships, not only with our neighbors and far beyond. We are also strong believers of mutual understanding and dialogue. Relations with the United States has taken a new level by the conclusion of our bilateral free trade agreement. It was signed in 2006, but it went into force in 2009. During the first year as ambassador in Washington, I spent much of my time lobbying the Congress ratification of the U.S.-Oman Free Trade Agreement. I'm sorry that Congressman Moran is not here this afternoon with us because he was one of the people who were very supportive when I first landed in the United States and negotiating the free trade agreement. I'm a firm believer in free trade, and that is why I have dedicated exceptional time as a representative of Oman in Washington to promoting negotiations for a free trade agreement between Oman and the United States. Today, these negotiations have become a reality, and in September 2006, President George Bush signed the free trade agreement. It has not been easy because I had to negotiate and lobby all the congressmen, all the 435 congressmen. And in a way, it opened doors for me because a number of the congressmen were curious to see who this Arab woman was, because I was the first Arab woman to represent an Arab country in the United States. There have been other Arab women ambassadors, but I was just lucky to have been appointed to the United States. In a way, it has opened doors for me because a lot of people were curious to see who I was. But at the same time, a name like Hunaina Al Mughairy, to a congressman, it could be a man or a woman. So when I walked in to see, I will not mention the name of the congressman, with my male colleague, he made a beeline to my colleague and said, "Mr. Ambassador." Of course, there was a little bit of awkwardness when she said that I was the ambassador, and I said, "Congressman, I forgive you if you will vote for me." Many economists list several positive long-term effects that can result from the free trade, and these include increased efficiency of domestic production as producers face new competition with the removal of trade tariff. We see this happening right now with the American exports to Oman and Omani's exports to the United States. Economies of scale and consequent reduction in costs and prices as domestic producers enjoyed an expanded market for their goods. Increased foreign investment from outside the free trade agreement as firms seek to locate operation within the borders of the free trade agreement to take advantage of its liberalized access to major new markets. In summation, Oman considers the United States as a strategic partner and friend. Oman and the United States have long shared the same goal of promoting regional stability. Hence, through the years, Oman and the United States have built a strong security partnership. The Sultanate of Oman will continue to attach high value to its close friendship and partnership with the United States, just as it has done in our two countries' first made contacts more than 2 centuries ago. Thank you very much for your time.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Al Mughairy, thank you so much for your remarks and for being with us here tonight, and for your country's long friendship for the United States and your long service in expressing that relationship to the U.S. government and the American people here in Washington. Thank you also for the opportunity to join you at the lovely iftar you hosted this summer.
Thank you.
And for the long-standing relationship we've enjoyed at the George Washington University with your embassy.
Thank you.
We're very grateful for your participation in 2010 when we, through our Middle East Policy Forum, hosted a dialogue on political and economic achievements in Oman over the preceding 40 years. And I would note that Oman's location is as beautiful as it is strategic. I'm very fortunate enough to have the opportunity to travel there. So thank you so much for everything you do to extend the U.S.-Omani relationship. Cognizant of our purpose tonight, I want to focus the first question on the changes that have been wrought by pioneers like yourself in diplomatic representation by women. It's surprising, I think, to many of us that of the many foreign representatives in Washington, we only have 16 serving women ambassadors and from foreign countries here in Washington. And you, I believe, are the longest serving. And so I wonder how your experience has changed over time. I might hope that you are no longer mistaken for your colleague when you first meet a congressperson, but perhaps you could reflect for us how things have changed for women ambassadors.
Okay. When I first arrived, I was a bit disappointed because I just missed the line that there was a book that was written and then there were 10. I was the 11th one, so I just missed being in that book. Actually, the numbers keep fluctuating, going up and down. There was a time about 3 or 4 years ago when we were 26 of us here. But unfortunately, that number has dwindled, and now we are 16. The two longest serving who are very respected and who also helped me when I was negotiating the free trade agreement was the ambassador of Singapore, who was here for 15 years, and the ambassador of Liechtenstein, who was here for 16 years and who just left this year. When we are with our male colleagues, we're just part of the team. We don't get the preference that because we're women, so that they would treat us differently. Unfortunately, we're not given the priority because we're women. We have to struggle and prove ourselves. When I arrived, we had Secretary Rice, who was the Secretary of the State Department, the Secretary of State, and then came Secretary Clinton. So we had 2 women as Secretary of State during my time, of course, and now we have Secretary John Kerry. So things have been fluctuating, but then like everything else in the world, people are more aware of women's achievements. It's not easy because we have to work twice as hard to be able to prove, but that is being more acceptable now.
Thank you so much. Our esteemed president, Mr. Tony Cully Foster, mentioned that we have representatives of the student bodies of the George Washington University and the American University, and perhaps others in the audience tonight. Many students come to our campuses here in Washington, D.C. with an interest in public service and some an interest in diplomatic service. And I'm wondering if you could reflect to them what steps they might take to prepare themselves for a career of diplomatic service.
Okay. Actually, I'm not the right person to say this because I'm not a career diplomat, but I'll take you through the steps. In the United States, of course, you have to do the Foreign Service exam, which is you apply to the State Department. But in my part of the world, well, let me start with myself. I'm an economist by profession, and I went to the New York University where I got my master's degree. So when my husband was appointed as ambassador to the United Nations, I resigned from the government and decided to join him in New York because I thought, oh, this is my chance to be able to do things that I couldn't afford to do when I was a student. Then the government asked me to set up the Center for Investment Promotion, so I was at the commercial attaché in New York. And that's when I got caught up negotiating the free trade agreement with the United States. And then the government gave me an offer that I couldn't turn down. In Oman, to be a diplomat, once you graduate, you apply to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is your State Department here. Then, of course, we have a diplomatic institute there. You will be trained in the diplomatic institute before you're posted abroad. Usually our foreign service postings are 4 years, but when you're head of mission, they can keep you there for as long as they feel they need you there. This is why I found myself here this long.
Thank you. You've highlighted Omani values of dialogue and mutual understanding and free trade. One of the things that we privilege in our conversation about the purpose of the university at George Washington University is citizenship and leadership. And I'm wondering if you could reflect for a moment on what constitutes the pillars of Omani citizenship and leadership.
Well, when we talk about dialogues, there's always the dialogues of civilization and the dialogue of understanding. And as I mentioned in my speech, we were instrumental in negotiating the release of not only the hikers with Iran, but also a number of your hostages in Yemen. Mm-hmm. And reflecting back, I see when I the first few years that I was here, when the parents of the 3 hikers came to see me, and somebody has told them that Oman has excellent relationship with all its neighbors, and at the same time we have excellent relationship with the United States. So we took it up from there, and because we have these excellent relationships, we were able to negotiate the release of the hikers, and at the same time we were able to release the hostages in Yemen. We were able to evacuate the American embassy in Yemen. We're still working that way because of the dialogues that we have with our neighbors. If we did not have dialogues, an excellent relationship with everybody would not be able to do that.
Thank you. Your story of U.S.-Omani relations is one of long-standing friendship but escalating engagement with a free trade agreement entering into force in 2009 and now an agreement on science and technology cooperation. Yeah. So I'm wondering what's next on your agenda in engagement with the U.S. government?
Well, we don't have any plans like that I can reveal right now. If if I say anything right now, then I would have spoiled it for the next plan that we have. Unless it is approved by both the two governments, I'm not at a liability of saying what it is. But of course, we have the excellent relationship, and we continue to have excellent relationship, and we hope we will have more agreements with us in the United States.
Are there topic areas that are of particular interest to engage in discussion about?
Well, you see, as we had mentioned earlier on, we're a country of 4 million people. Education is very, very important with us. We have about 4,000 students studying in the United States. So, of course, this is very important for us to educate the young people. Education is very, very important. We are a country who are dependent on oil, and we've embarked on a Vision 2020 where we'll diversify from dependency on oil to, it started off initially we were looking at agriculture, but because we are a desert country, we don't have any water. We're very, most of our water is we have recycled water for the plants, etc. But so agriculture is out of the question because, so we moved to industry, and now we're looking to science and technology. But most important, education is very important to be able to, if we really want to diversify, then education is one of the things that we should concentrate on.
Tremendous. You've mentioned Oman's membership, active membership in many international organizations, and I wonder if there are particular international organization initiatives that are salient to Oman now, particularly at this moment. We're coming out of the annual meetings of the International Monetary Fund, and I'm wondering if there are initiatives that are salient to you at this time.
Well, right now, because, as you all know, that the price of oil has dropped from, it used to be over $100 a barrel to, it went down to $30. But now, because of the agreements that we just have with OPEC and all the neighboring country, the price of oil has gone up to $50 a barrel. This is one of the important things that was discussed at the IMF meetings last week. Of course, everybody is looking and diversify from dependency on oil, and which is a big challenge because it's a country that the whole region, we were all depending on oil. So we are all trying to diversify from depending on oil. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we have.
Thank you so much. I'm struck by another fact that Tony shared about Oman's success in combating radicalization and violent extremism. And that's a topic of great interest for many folks in the United States. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how and why Oman is so successful in that regard.
When you asked me that question, I was just thinking, when I was at Congress, this is about a year or so ago, one of the congressmen asked me, because we have different ethnic groups in Oman. We have the Sunnis and the Shias, and the Abadis. I'm an Abadi. In Oman, there is a sect called Abadis, which is a very liberal sort of sect of Islam, which not many people know about it. And one of the congressmen asked me, so how do you live? How do you people live together without having any differences? And I said it's because of the leadership. We do not differentiate, and we do not ask each other if you're a Sunni or a Shia. And majority of us are called what you call Abadis. And this Abadis is a sect in Islam also, which was more liberal. And His Majesty is one of those people who does not differentiate. In our cabinet, we have people who are Sunnis, Shias, Abadis, and as the President has just said, more than 40% of the population is non-Omani, and we all live together in harmony because we do not differentiate from one person to another.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, thank you for your responses. I think I've indulged my privilege and curiosity to the extent of the patience of the audience. And so I would like folks to join us now for questions. There is one microphone.
You spoke a little bit about the changes you've seen over your tenure here. How about in terms of you being an advocate for Arab women, for Muslim women, coming from Oman? Have you noticed a change in perception, public opinion vis-a-vis the region and Oman, and hopefully in a positive direction?
Yeah. The good thing is, personally, when I talk about me, I have not. I know I've seen a lot what's been said in the media and in the newspaper. None of my colleagues and myself, and mind you, I have about 4 diplomats who are women, and we have not experienced anything that would have made us feel that there's any sort of discrimination with who we are. So apart from what I'm reading in the papers, I'm not in a position to say that I felt there is any difference from when I arrived here to today. When I visit the Congress, I feel I'm very welcomed. And at the think tanks also, I get invited to a lot of universities and think tanks to speak. One of the questions that I'm usually asked is, what do you think about the Shia and the Sunnis? And this is something that has just cropped up in the United States very recently. I'm reluctant to talk about Shia and Sunnis because I'm neither a Sunni nor a Shia. And then people would ask, aren't you a Muslim? I am a Muslim, but there are other sects in Islam other than this thing. But other than being asked a question like that, I have not felt any difference in the approach when I meet people.
I'm interested in knowing the percentage of youth in your country. And do you face the same problem that Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is facing in trying to maybe propose that his people, the youth, now have to learn to work a little bit more than what they had to? I don't know enough quite, and I was just curious what you're facing. And thank you very much for your leadership in your words about how your Sultan does not differentiate between people. I think there's a philosopher now who's just received an impressive award, Charles Taylor, that is suggesting that we must all look to each other and find our humanity and not see differences. We must see the oneness of us all. So I thank you for those words.
Okay. We are about 40 to 60% of our population is under 25. So we are also having a big challenge of employment in the next few years. So this is one of the things we all have to address in the Gulf, and Oman is no difference, where we have to, and this is why I kept saying that education is very important. We graduate about 40,000 secondary school leavers. We send a number of them abroad on government scholarship. Education is free, by the way, in Oman. Education and health is free in Oman, and education is must up to the medium school, so both for girls and boys. But once you graduate from secondary school, we have one government university, and which takes about 5,000-6,000. The government sends students abroad, well, to the United States. I know the figure in the United States, which is 4,000 because I'm the ambassador. But then we also send students to the UK, to the other Arab countries, to Australia, and some to the Far East, India, Malaysia. We send students there. So the biggest challenge, of course, is the population, because it's growing very fast. Yes. So we have to create employment for these young people. But Omanis have always worked. Well, the provost here can tell you, when you land in Oman, from the minute you land in Oman, you see the face of Omanis from the airport to the hotels. So Omanis are used to working all sorts of jobs. So it's nothing new to find Omanis having all walks of life.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time, Your Excellency. My name is Jawdat Basrawi. I'm a Saudi Arabian citizen myself. Little fun factoid, I guess. So I have high regards for Oman as a nation. Shukran kathir wallah. So my question is, given my Saudi Arabian background and coming from a Gulf Cooperation Council nation, has your ambassadorship made an impact on neighboring countries with regards to your role, not only in terms of being the first female ambassador from the Arab world to the United States, but in all other facets, be it your economic background, the Expo 2020 happening in nearby Dubai, those two facets. You as a person, has it made an impact, and also your profession as an economist as well?
Since I was the first Arab woman ambassador, Bahrain sent a woman ambassador after me, and now we have Jordan, who sent first woman ambassador a couple of years ago, and now it's been replaced by another woman ambassador. So the region is sending women ambassadors, which is great. When I first arrived here, it practically killed me trying to be a success, because I thought to myself, if I'm a failure, they will never send another Arab woman ambassador to the United States. So I didn't have just to work for myself, for my country, Oman, but I have to work for all the Arab women. So otherwise they would have said, see, we sent an Arab woman and she was a total failure. So as I said, for women to be a success, we have to work twice as hard. I'm very lucky because His Majesty is very pro-women. As long as you're professional and you know what you're doing, the sky's the limit.
My name is Omid Ansari. I'm a freshman at American University. I'm an Iranian American. So my question was, how has Oman been able to have decent relationships with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, the two major powers in the Middle East that are always conflicting?
Well, it's based to the principles. Our principles is the main principle of our foreign policy is to maintain excellent relationship with our neighbors. Iran is our neighbor. It's a neighbor with a big population, with a long history, and it's there to stay. So like all our neighboring countries, we maintained excellent relationship with them. United States is a country that, as I mentioned in my talk, we've had relationships since the 18th century, as we were the first country to sign MAT on commerce with the United States. Because of these good relationships, and as I said, we believe in dialogue, this is why we were able to maintain the relationship. We don't interfere in the internal policies of any country.
How about between Iran and Saudi Arabia, because they're the two major powers in the
I'm
Middle
sorry?
East? Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
How are you able to have decent relationships with both Saudi Arabia and Iran? Because they're both, even though they're not, there's a proxy war with the Syrian civil war. How is Oman able to have a decent relationship with both countries?
No, we have excellent. We are members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, so we have excellent relationship with Saudi Arabia. Our relationship with Iran goes back many, many years, but it was also cemented in the early 70s when Oman was fighting the communists in the south. And during that time, it was a different Iranian administration, but it was the Iranian people who came to our rescue. A number of them lost their lives when we were fighting the communists in the south. We cannot forget the Iranian people. So whichever the administration is just as I mentioned here, whoever is in the White House, we will work with them, and that goes the same with Iran. We will work with whoever's. It was the Iranian people who came to our rescue when we needed help in the early 70s.
I just wanted to ask you if you could describe the immigration policy in Oman. You said earlier that many of the immigrants were from India. And I was wondering if you could describe the immigration policy and how that has affected the economy in Oman.
Well, we have a lot of, I said we have a lot of guest workers. We have a lot of guest workers.
Okay.
They're not only from India. We have guest workers from India, Pakistan, the Philippines. In fact, we have guest workers from all over the world. And we have guest workers in all professions, from managers to CEOs to domestic help. As long as you have a work permit, you're welcome to work in the United States. When you're talking about immigration, are you talking about the work permit or you're talking about tourism? If it's tourism, then as an American citizen, you can get a tourist when you land in Oman.
Okay.
At the airport. Everybody needs a visa, but there's certain countries when you arrive at the airport, then you can straight away get a visa.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was asking about tourism.
Tourism. And tourism is one of the things that we're trying to promote right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get an Omani visa when you land at the airport.
Okay.
Or you can come to the embassy and we'll issue you a visa.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your remarks this evening. My name is Jenna McGee, and I work for a U.S. refugee resettlement organization. And I was wondering if I could get your opinion or remarks on how Oman is reacting to the global refugee crisis, particularly in nearby Syria and neighboring Yemen. Thank you.
It's quite concerning for all of us, the number of refugees, especially the ones from Syria. We are helping to finance some of the camps in Jordan. We've taken some refugees. As I said, we have a number of guest workers in Oman, so their relatives were welcome to come to Oman. A number of the refugees, they themselves would prefer going to Europe because they have the infrastructure. As I mentioned, we're a country of between 3.5 to 4 million. When His Majesty took over, we had only 15 kilometers of paved road, 2 schools for boys, no schools for girls, one hospital run by an American missionary. So the infrastructure that has been built in Oman in the last 45 years is what you see right now. So we don't have the infrastructure to accommodate all these refugees. So I think the refugees themselves prefer going to Europe because you are able to absorb them within the society. But we do have a number of refugees. I don't know if you can call them refugees, but all the guest workers who are from Syria are allowed to bring in their members of their family.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so impressed with you and your country, and I've had Omani classmates, and they've all been so wonderful and intelligent. I have a very good impression of Oman. And I was wondering, do you think of yourself maybe as a country of Oman, and maybe Pakistan is kind of in that boat where they have a variety of ethnic groups and sects. Do you maybe see yourself as a peacemaker amongst the Islamic world, just because you are so successful at incorporating so many different kinds of people from different backgrounds within your country, and as you mentioned, the guest workers are welcome. So do you think of yourself as maybe a peace broker in some way?
Well, we are ready to help if anybody asks for our help. We will not interfere without being asked, but if somebody asks for our help, yes, definitely, we will be more than willing to help. As I mentioned, we have excellent relationship with our neighbors, so if it's anything to do with the region and if we can play a role, we will be more than happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question really is with regard to the role of Oman with foreign aid as a recipient or a donor, or both. If you could please elaborate on that.
When it comes to donor, of course, like I just mentioned, that we assist in the refugees. Whenever Oman is very much low profile, so even if we do assist, we do not like to publicize where we give our assistance. So that is a very personal thing for Oman. Receiving donations, His Majesty is very, very much conservative about that. So we try as much as possible to live within our means and not to receive any donation from anybody else. So it's not going to be easy because we have the challenges that are facing us with the price of oil going down, but we just have to work very hard.
Ambassador Mughairy, Dr. Shah, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please join me.
Thank you for joining us for World Affairs Today, a production of the World Affairs Council, Washington, D.C. Stay connected with us at www.worldaffairstoday.org.